Okay, I'm going to call to order this special meeting of council. First, I'd like to respectfully acknowledge that this meeting is taking place on a traditional unceded territory of the Stanawas First Nation. First item on the agenda, I'll just make that as adoption of the agenda so that the October 29th, 2025 special council meeting agenda be adopted as presented and seconded by Councillor Savage. Any additions, deletions? Okay, hearing nothing, I'll move to call into question. All those in favor, opposed, and that's carried unanimously. Okay. That takes us on the public input period. We don't have anybody remotely registered this evening, nobody in the gallery, so we'll skip 6. Moving on to number 10, so we're under new business. We have the 2026 to 2030 draft financial plan proposed tax increase. So Director Sapola, you are, I'm assuming, going to be introducing this?
Yes, Your Worship.
Yeah, so whenever you're ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. Today we have the first part of our budget discussion, which is the operating financial plan and a proposed tax increase of 6.5%. Administration is requesting that Council direct staff to increase the property tax not more than 6.5% for 2026 and not more than 3% for 27 through 2030 inclusive. The rationale behind the tax increase is based on the cumulative increases of the non-residential cost construction pricing index. They've risen between 11 and 13% between 2023 and 25. The cumulative effect has been 12.8% over the last 3 years. Highway and public infrastructure costs have similarly risen by 4 to 7% annually. You'll see in my report there is a chart that shows the cumulative effect of those increases from 2023, and there's a projection there for 25. That was done by the Statistics Canada group. The increase ensures that the municipality can maintain service levels and fund infrastructure renewal responsibly through reserve transfers and maintaining it. To note, though, that's maintaining current transfers and only slight increases. When I was going through the documentation that was provided previously to administration and to council, there was an asset investment recommendation from 2018 that listed the current reserve transfers of 633,000 with a recommendation to raise that to $1 million a year. Those transfers have not been made, and we would have to, if council wishes to revisit that, we'd have to go back and pull that to talk about reserve levels, and that'll be at a later discussion in capital as we go along. But right now, to address the operational needs, we're asking 6.5%.
Yeah, as a point of privilege, sorry, through the chair, if I could just get you to speak into the mic, just a nip easier to hear you. Thank you.
Sorry. I'll just move it closer to myself. So the 3% in the following years is a projection based on the information that was provided by the staff team. The essentials that we're looking at today are to maintain core service levels through the community, to address escalating construction and infrastructure renewal costs. I use the Victoria region as my guideline. They don't do smaller regions like the Central Island and things like that unless I go specifically to the BC government, and I was getting a lot of my information from Statistics Canada. And then, sorry, I do on page 7 of the agenda show what a 6.5% increase looks like. And I just did it, I took the total residential assessment, divided it by the number of properties that are in our area, and the average taxation is $1,619.84, and I applied a 6.5% increase to that just to do some simple breakdowns. and came up with $105.29 as being the impact to the residential, to an average residential home in the area. So just did it straight, using straight math. I didn't do anything fancy. I didn't go by different housing areas or anything like that. I just took and divided it in. So it takes into account all the, everything from the new properties on the, I guess that would be the west side of town, and then the mobile home parks and everything in between. So that's what is the average. Sustainability implications, and that is a section here to address, is that the funding allocated to asset operational maintenance helps prevent large future tax spikes. So there's a lot of, there were a number of items that were listed on the capital financial plan last year, and going through them with the auditor, there were several that appeared to be maintenance items that are going to get moved into the operational items like valve turning and things like that, and hydrant repairs and things. Supports stable operations and service delivery through the 2026-30 period, and reduces the risk of underfunding projects that rely on escalating construction and renewal costs, such as pothole filling is a really good example of an item that was underfunded in 2025. When they were going through and doing the pothole filling, they had a budget of 17,000. It was reduced by staff at the time. And I've had to increase it back up to 35,000, which was the average, to maintain the road maintenance as the residents have an expectation of service level that's maintained there. So that was one of the cuts that was a little bit painful, and so we're trying to fix a couple items like that in this budget. So that's my short presentation today.
Sure. Councillor Lerner, I see you got your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. If it's okay, I just have a few quick questions.
Yeah, go for it.
Perfect. Thank you. First, thank you to staff for the GL code breakdown. That was actually very helpful for me. My first question is the 6.5% proposed increase. I also see that there's a recommendation that is an alternative to do a 3% tax increase and 4% in future years. So I'm wondering, just to confirm, the GL code that we received is based on the 6.5%. Is that correct?
Through Your Worship, yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. And then is that 6.5%? Is that inclusive of the increased funding we receive from new builds? In other words, the increased tax assessed value usually each year adds some extra money to the coffers. Is that included in the 6.5%, or is that in addition to the tax increased assessed value?
That's in addition to the 6.5.
Okay, thank you.
I've estimated, I visited that question with the Director of Planning, and we determined through the building permits that have been issued and some estimates on what will be completed by the end of the year. And we should be able to achieve what we got last year, which was around $90,000. We're just over $90,000 in new taxation. So the 6.5% plus another 85,000, just to be on the safe side. I just went a little bit low on that estimate.
Thank you. And then if I may I think my last question for now is with regards to reserves. There was a mention in the presentation about reserve transfers. I know that recommendation was from prior to this council in 2018, but I believe last year we passed a number of motions to completely restructure our reserves. So I just want to make sure those reserve restructurings have taken place and the transfers that were authorized last year have been made. Is that correct?
That is correct. They have been made and they're in place, and they have an increase of 2% per year, every year till 2030. The interest, the amount being transferred, the recommendation last year was to transfer 90% of the interest. Because interest is falling, That was one of the challenges, so I had modified what I put in for interest, so that actually falls this year, or in 2026, it will fall. We project to
Okay.
get all the interest that was in the financial plan for 2025, so that's good news.
Great. Thank you. That answers my questions for now, and then I'll save my opinions for the debate. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, additional speakers or questions through to Director Sepola? Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Jones.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for the work. Thank you for the GL codes. Much appreciated. There's a bit of information I'm wondering if you could provide perhaps for the next meeting. And it's just to get a summary of all the staff wages and benefits. They're in different sections here. I could do it myself, but I think it would be a lot easier for you. I'm interested in seeing a timeline from 2022, the same timeline that you have here, but a summary of all staff wages and benefits for those years. And then that, further to that, a conversation about the sums going forward, if those are based on our current staffing, just to understand that. So looking at the past numbers, there's a lot of variation in them depending on what the staff levels were at the time for the year, right? Yeah. We've had turnovers and changes, so I'm just trying to get in my own mind a stronger sense of where we are.
Yeah, I actually have that completed, and it can be definitely printed out and brought to the next meeting. I have that completed already, so summary of all the major components. So I also have summarized for council, if they wish, materials and supplies and consultants and things like that. So I'll bring that categorized document forward to you guys so you can see that.
Oh, thank you.
And staffing levels, yes, they do vary. And oftentimes we don't have a full contingent of staffing. So when you're looking at the actuals, like you say, you will see those variations because oftentimes we don't have a full contingent of staffing. And moving forward, we are proposing some new staff members to increase our contingent. So that is also going to be a discussion, I'm sure, for council on those business plans.
And the information on the consultants goes nicely with that. Often they take up the slack at times. And I would assume the 50,000 for the active transportation consultants, is that in the 2025 column for consultants?
I have that listed under special programs on the capital list for council's consideration. I pulled those out and they'll appear at the bottom so you guys can see exactly what we're requesting. So the active transportation, there's a number of studies and different programs. There's the water maintenance projects and things like that that are all operating. And I've pulled them all out for council to review and look at on an individual basis so that they can see what we're doing inside the budget.
Thank you. So active transportation, instead of being under consultants, is under, I didn't quite catch it.
I have them separated out right now. It will go under consultants once council looks at that and gives me the check mark, and then I'll insert it in. And because it's being funded by grant, it has no impact on taxation.
Oh, so maybe I'm misinformed on this. With the active transportation consultants, there's two of them that are working currently. My understanding was the grant was $50,000 and the contribution from the district is $50,000. Is that correct or not?
I thought it was fully funded by grant. I have it in for 50,000.
Okay, so I guess let's check that.
Yeah, I'll clarify that.
And then let me know what the situation actually is.
I'll clarify that with the Director of Planning.
Thank you. That's all for now. Thanks.
Additional questions, comments? Go ahead, Councillor Savitt.
Yeah, so through chair to staff, first one is the financial chap we had last year said he was going to be putting our reserves into higher paying savings accounts, higher interest rates, and has that proved worthwhile? I know you just mentioned interest rates a minute ago, so have we got an increase in our savings return with interest?
We will be exceeding budget line, so yes, they were moved into the MFA high interest daily savings. So we maintain liquidity while achieving higher interest rates than what was previously earned with the credit union.
Okay, and is that a big increase with, over what it was before, or just like around 20,000,
Well,
50,000?
referring to the actuals, just let me have a look here. So interest revenue in the past was, for 2022, 114,000, then 319, and then 557,000. And then at the end of July, we were at 403, so halfway through the year. So yeah, I'd say that was a significant
Yeah,
increase.
yeah, so that was a good move then, regardless of the interest rates going up or down, it's still better than
Oh, yeah.
what it was before, relatively speaking. Excellent. And the tax stabilization reserve, I thought I saw somewhere in the documents that it was being increased quite substantially this year. Was it around 139,000?
I'm just going to find
I can't
out.
quite find it now, but
Oh, yeah, it's at the bottom of the general fund.
Thank you. With the GL code, if you could, is it perhaps the bottom of page 9, contributions to surplus and reserves?
it's page 10, about a third of the way down. It's the last one under reserves, but it doesn't have a number there. That's why I'm asking. It's blank, and just the history of it is council targeted that reserve. It was basically, we were told at the start of this term, for covering mostly the election expenses. So I believe the balance in there is more than enough to cover that.
Okay, so you're both right. There's a tax stabilization reserve, which was the old one, but on.
I'm sorry, point of personal privilege, I can't hear.
Sorry, I turned off my mic, sorry. So you're both right. There is a tax stabilization reserve, but on the midway through, but that's the old name. There's the finance stabilization reserve, which is at the bottom of page 9, which Councillor Jones was referring to. So I'll wait for you to switch there. It's the third line from the bottom. And that has 139,470 being transferred to it.
From taxes?
From taxes, yeah.
And yet in 2025, the actual contribution was zero.
In the green space, that's the actuals. I haven't performed the end of year transfer yet because I need to make sure that nothing is impeding that transfer. If there was like a major event and if there was something that happened in the meantime, I would have not transferred it in. But needless to say, all the money that we have that we don't need for operating sits in the MFA high interest savings. So we earn interest on $18 million because we only run about 500,000 in our checking. So that takes care of our monthly needs. So we're earning a lot of interest, but I'll do all the transfers at the end of the year. If you go one more line over, you'll see the budget had 156,982 assigned to it. So I'll make that transfer, I'll do those transfers at the end of the year with the audit process.
Yeah, but it's just that with that increase, that's taking tax income, that's increasing tax income by 139,000 to put into this reserve?
Well, we put 156,000 into it last year, so I'm not requesting an additional increase. I'm actually decreasing it by 14,000 or something, or I'm decreasing a little bit just to accommodate some of the changes that were made.
Okay. So the 2025 budget put 156,000 into it.
Correct.
I see, okay. All right, thank you for that. And the council one-time projects, it's on the GL code here somewhere, but it shows no contribution for this year. It's been 50,000 each year the past few years.
You just let me.
If I misread that, or if there's a plan to put the usual 50,000 into it. So I have no idea where it is on the.
Sorry, which one was it, Council?
It's called the Council One-Time Projects Reserve.
That reserve, I don't believe exists anymore. That reserve doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, we preserve.
Okay, just,
that.
excuse me, everybody, just one person at a time. When director is speaking, let her finish, and then we can go to the counselor. Go ahead, Director Sepola.
So, following the 2026 financial plan that was created, or the 2025 financial plan that was created by the previous director or the consultant, did not have money funded there for the 2026 year. So I was following those fundings, assuming that that's what council had approved for 2026 when they put together their 25 through 29 plan. If council wishes to maintain that reserve contribution, then I'll have to either take it out of the other areas or like the other areas of savings, or I'll have to find some way to fund that, like alternate way to fund that transfer.
Yes,
Go
great.
ahead, Counselor Savage.
Okay, thank you for that.
Counselor Lerner, just hold on. I'm gonna let Counselor Lerner have a chance. Go ahead, Counselor Lerner.
Sorry, I may have been confused. My recollection was that we renamed a number of reserves, and that originally council special projects was an operational line item that had $50,000 each year in order to do council initiated projects that were not originally budgeted for. And please correct me through staff if I'm wrong, but that was an operational line item that was called council special projects at 50,000 each year. And then we renamed that into some other reserve that it got combined with, but it was still a line item. But I do recall that it was removed from 2026 and put into some other reserve. So I'd have to go back and look at my notes, but it's just a different place. But I could be wrong.
Counselor Jones.
I'm having similar memories. The former consultant had put it into another fund. We requested that it be listed by line item and that there be the $50,000 a year put into it. Whether it remained there as a reserve or whether it was pulled out, as Councilor Lerner recalls, I don't know. But I do believe we were very clear as a council on direction that that is to be funded $50,000 a year going forward, as it has been in the past.
Okay, Director Sepola.
Looking at, I can take the 2025, because like I say, I use that as, that's what council wanted. I'm looking at the list of reserves and the way that they were amalgamated on my screen right now. I can share it with council if you want. I see 2 one-time project reserves. I don't see anything named council one-time reserves. These would be the balance sheet items. I'd have to go back and do some more digging to find out exactly which reserve this money would have been transferred to. There's no money in one of them, and in another one, there's $171,000. So again, I'd have to go back and trace where the previous year's money had gone, but there's nothing slated in 2025 under council one-time projects in the financial plan, and there was nothing going forward for that either. So if council wishes that to be an ongoing reserve, then we'd have to look at the policy again and the bylaws to see where that fits.
Councillor Jones?
Thank you. I think that is what we were doing last year with the consultant. So I thought that had been sorted out. You said one-time projects reserve. I believe the word council was put in front of it just as a kind of a clarification that this reserve is for small projects and only to be used with approval of council. That's why the word council was put in there, but I recall it being just listed as one-time projects reserve. You mentioned that you see $171,000 in one of them. That sounds right, familiar, but where would that $171,000 be now if it isn't listed in the one-time projects reserve going forward, just due to this, difficulty in communication?
Well, last year in 2024, it received $71,400 was transferred into the one-time projects. And just to clarify, money can't be moved from a reserve unless council approves it in a budget. So all reserve transfers are approved by council. And so this one-time projects reserve does not currently get a transfer in 2025 or 26. I can take money that is being directed to the financial stabilization reserve and move it to the one-time projects if that's what council wishes me to do, and that will have no impact on the tax increase. That's just simply taking whatever council designates, 25, 50,000 or whatever have you, into that reserve.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you. I do recall some discussion last year about whether it was appropriate for the one-times projects to be called a reserve. It hadn't been within a reserve previously. But thank you for that clarification about the use of reserves and council approval. So if I understand correctly, there is a one-time projects reserve. There is a certain amount of money in it. You can clarify again how much so that I don't just misspeak. But none has been added this year. So if we wish to add it this year, we're going to have to figure out where that money's going to come from. Is that a correct summary?
Through your worship, yes, that's correct. And the balance, I believe, let me pull it up again. Sorry. I'm so used to having multiple screens. I'm like trying to just deal with the tininess of it. $171,546.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Lerner?
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I don't want to belabor the point, but I think my notes basically had indicated that money had been set aside each year as an operational item, not a reserve. And then when we restructured reserves, we took all the amount that we had not used, which was 171,000 approximately, put it into an official reserve, but we didn't add even more to it. So we didn't add beyond the 171,000 last year. We just transferred the 171 that hadn't been used and stuck it in the reserve. So the question I guess we will have to face this year is whether we want to add more so that it has a bigger balance than 171, or whether we're fine to leave it at like that for a bit and spend out of it. So I look forward to the discussion.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Spola.
Just a point of clarification. The $171,000 that I'm talking about it actually existed before. It had a balance of 101,000. It had a project taken from it to fund for 1,500 into operating, and then another $71,000 was added. So this one-time project fund does exist. The other one-time project reserve that's on this list has nothing in it, and maybe that's the new one that you're thinking of, but it did not receive any funds at all. So yeah, so I'm not 100% certain, but I think what would help is if when we have the reserve discussion, when we're reviewing capital and the funding structure of capital, I bring a more fulsome discussion of reserves, previous balance histories, and where they're going and future projections and things like that. So it usually comes with the capital and the funding portion thereof. So you can I'll print out the 2024 balance so you guys can see even how those reserves were merged onto the balance sheet items and what was discontinued. So you guys can have a good look at what happened in the financial records, if council so chooses.
Any further questions, Councillor Jones?
One can only hope that for me, that will solve all the little confusions of numbers that go on in my mind. I'm looking at page 10 of 14 in the top block, which is mostly reserves, that section, and seeing that when you add them all up, 2024 actual is 1.5,061,570. And the 2025 budget is 1.3,050,063. Could you just help me understand those numbers a little bit better? So hopefully we're not in the situation where we're putting less into reserves than we were, but that's what it looks like to me. So I know there are other places where we're seeing numbers for reserves, so I appreciate that you're going to put it all together in one. But if you could just comment on those two numbers, that would be great. Thank you.
I'm just trying to catch up with you. You're saying in 2024, there was 1.5 million?
Yes, I'm looking at page 10, the summary line, and it appears to be mostly contributions to various reserves. 2024, the actual 1.5 million, 61,570,
Yep.
and the 2025 budget, 1.3 million, 50,063.
Yes, so in your 2025 plan, you had the 1.3 that was approved by council, and they are reducing, and then they will start to ramp back up again in 27 through 30. But yeah, they were reduced. I mean, when I look at the 1.5 and the 1.3, that's a reduction in savings for sure. Alls I can say about that is likely there'll be more interest coming in, and I'll probably bring back an amendment for council once we get to the end of the year and I move 90% of interest there. But I can't speak to why the reserves or why the previous finance consultant and council decided on the 1.3, likely because of the constraints around how much could get saved. And the 3% would have been in here. Like I did see the 3% coming in here that council raised for additional taxes, but it's down from the 1.5. And the other interesting point that I want to make here is that the community works is actually is grant funded. It's not tax funded. So we need to look at what money's coming from taxation, what money's coming from grants. I need to break that down for you if we really want to talk about what's coming from taxes and what's coming from what's being deferred to future years for grant spending. Because there's some money here that is clearly not tax money. So why don't I break that down for you as well?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor Jones.
Thank you very much. That would be extremely helpful. I do recall discussions with the consultant last year, and I think we were all on the same page that funding reserves is extremely important. And there's some history there about how it happened. And we spoke to that to say that funding reserves first, and not funding them with money that's left over after the year's expenditures are added up. That is the way that this council directed the former consultant to go. I personally recall being assured that our reserves were fully funded, so look forward to the breakdown on this. Maybe it's the numbers are going to change a bit if some of the money that's outside of taxes influences it, but we need to discuss this as a council further for sure, so we'll do
So-
that.
Yeah, Director Spola, go ahead. And then
Thank you.
Councillor Lerner.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just as a point of clarification, I just want to ask that, I just want to get clarification from council. When you ask, are reserves funded, are you meaning, do I have enough money in the bank and equities to cover them? Or do you mean that the reserves themselves are capable of sustaining the financial capital plan? Is that the question?
I'm going to let either Councillor Lerner or Councillor Savage answer that question. Both of them are a little better on this topic than I am.
Thank you.
Councillor Lerner.
Thank you, through your worship. So just to clarify what I was talking about earlier. So my understanding is that there's a few things to look at. One is the reserves being fully funded for me means that there's actual money in the bank to back up what's on the balance sheet. In other words, there's equity in the bank to fully cover the reserves. And each time we have an audit, I ask, are the reserves fully funded in that sense? And so far the answer has always been yes, in the sense that we don't have unfunded speculative reserves. Whether our reserves are at the level we want them to be, meaning that there's as much, there is a 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, where is it? That is a totally different ballgame for me. It's a question of how much do we plan to spend and how much, and then that helps determine how much we want to have in the bank. But as far as having equity to back them up, to me, that's what fully funded means. Then there's also the difference between money in your savings account and the financial process of transferring them on the balance sheet into the reserve. So I would invite staff to just clarify if I'm wrong, but I'm under the impression that our money, the 18 million or whatever that we have at any given time, is inside a high interest savings account, but that it is not transferred on the balance sheet of paperwork into the reserve until the end of the year, so that it is locked into that reserve for during the audit process. Is that correct, or am I mistaken?
Through your worship, no, that's exactly right. That's the process. And yes, in that case, then I want to say that the reserves are fully funded. We have enough in short-term assets and cash to fully cover the reserves. The reserve balance at the end of 2024 was for the general fund 6 million. The reserves for the water, hang on, I'll bring it up just so that you guys are aware, so that we can get this question out of the way. The reserves for sewer were 1.4 and the reserves for water were 2.46. So we had sufficient, and it was 6.9 was the general fund. So those are the three funds that we carry reserves in. So, that's what they sum to, like what's taxation supported, what's water supported, and what's sewer utility supported. So that's the balances in the three.
Thank you.
Can you repeat the general?
The general is 6.9 million.
And that would include the roads?
That would include the roads, yeah.
Yeah.
And total sewer reserve is 1.47. And total water is 2.46.
And sorry, in that general fund, that would be like roads and drainage and
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
all your.
parks.
Yep, parks, roads,
Okay.
trails, anything that isn't water.
Councillor Lerner, did you have a follow-up?
No follow-up question. I think council will just have to debate whether we want to see that grow.
Okay, I was just gonna comment. So yeah, the interesting discussion around this whole fully funded reserves, and I understand like when we have the audit, it's about the auditor saying, what we have planned in that year. Do we have the funds to, pay for it? And the response is yes. So, but what it doesn't speak to is how does that tie into our asset management or replacement plan moving forward. And, you know, the key one I always harp on every single year is roads. You know, like here we are, we're, you know, into our fourth year of this term and we haven't paved a road. And now we're looking at Dickinson, for instance, and I know we're going to be dealing with capital next time, but this is what we're talking about is, you know, are we fully funding our reserves, anticipating what our replacement is going to be? And we probably need bigger reserve contributions, anticipating that, you know, the future management replacement program or whatever we're going to do in the future. So I think there'll be more information coming to us next meeting on that, as we're dealing more with the operational side of things today. So potholes, not doing the full road replacements. So anyways, lots to say on all that stuff, but that's going to be the big issue really, I think, for this council is, you know, more there, you know, what are we looking at for our asset management contributions or replacement contributions, you know, planning for the future. Like, you know, that's, we got to build our reserves up to a real healthy level to really, you know, deal with our anticipated future costs. So anyways, I'll leave it there. Councillor Jones.
Yes, through the chair to Director Sapola. Is active transportation within a road reserve or a separate reserve? How do you recommend that be managed within the budget?
I'm just looking that up right now. And because that's in the capital, I wasn't quite prepared to talk to that, but because I'm going to be going back to the planning director, Mr. Robinson, tomorrow, and we're going to talk about the active transportation plan. I want to make sure that I understand how the funding structure, what it was set up for in 2025, because this is a carry forward project. I want to make sure of that. And because we have the grant and it is matching, it would have a component assigned to it already. So that's would be where I'd get it from. I know that's kind of a long way to say I'd get it from the same place we got it from this year, so.
Thank you. Then maybe you could advise council going forward whether you feel active transportation should be listed separately as a reserve. It is a fairly significant area going forward for our community, and, you know, along with roads, obviously. And I don't know, for budgeting purposes, if it should be funded and listed separately or not. I don't know how other communities do it. I don't know what typical expenses, you know, budgeting for active transportation is for a community our size. Yeah. And I'd really appreciate some of that.
So you probably heard somebody else like me say the word encumbrance. So I use encumbrance of funds to set them aside within the reserve. That way we don't have to have a multitude of small reserves for one-time projects. I simply just encumber the money or earmark it for a project, and I take it out of the available funds within that reserve for future projects.
Thank you very much. That's helpful. I notice in the terms of reference for the Parks and Trails Committee, there's something there about setting some budget numbers for Parks and Trails, which I feel is beyond the scope of this committee. Would it also be the same, active transportation, Parks and Trails? There's quite an overlap there, but is that the way you would also handle expenditures that fall under that category? You'd earmark it within the larger reserve?
If there were spending values that were given to that committee or assigned to that committee, and there was direction from council or motions from council, that money is encumbered. I'm hoping that answers your question.
If I understand correctly, then you need spending values for that in that area, and the same for active transportation. So,
well, active transportation has a grant, and council were tied by agreement to have that money set aside because we had to sign saying that we accepted that grant with the conditions around it. Correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So
yeah.
Yeah. So that automatically encumbers the money. The other thing that encumbers money is budget values that get assigned, and if there's reserves that are attached to it, then, you know, I'm always looking for those projects, whether they be operating related or whether like one-time operating projects or capital projects. I'm always looking for those motions when they come out of council. Ari has helped me on a number of occasions with that to go through and pull out documentation and council motions. And so if something was assigned to the Parks and Trails Committee through, again, a motion of council or a budget line item, then those are items that I look for, especially when it's a project that needs to get carried forward to the next year.
Thank you, that's very helpful. Well, the projects would be approved by council, not by the committee. They don't have that authority. There'd just be a recommendation there. With the active transportation in the grant, I understand that's its own little thing. There hopefully will be projects coming out of the active transportation plan, as well as, you know, from the Parks and Trails Committee. So my understanding is that you're going to need some guidance on values for setting aside on an annual basis for those things.
Exactly, yeah. And usually, because those amounts are presented to council, they would need like a business plan or some kind of proposal with estimates attached, or that's how I get it from staff. So I'd imagine that whoever the staff member was that was at that would then either bring forward a report or request some kind of funding allocation through a budget process. Because that's the only way to assign money, which you guys already know that, so. I know I'm
Thank
just
you,
talking
that's
to
very
the-
helpful.
speaking
So
to
the staff liaisons, Director Robinson, so he would be involved in that part of this, and the active transportation consultants will probably provide some budgeting for
Some recommend,
for some projects that they prioritize.
yeah.
Okay,
And
thank you.
that would be very helpful, and yeah, that's how I've typically received information from committees before. It goes before council, and then it gets assigned back down, and the staff member comes up with a budget plan.
Councillor Saab.
Thank you.
Yeah, just a couple of things. First, with the category of line items versus reserves governed by bylaws, what we did last year was we bundled some of the line items into one reserve. And we did that because the finance fellow last year had said that our current bylaws governing reserves were inadequate. And that's not a good thing. You have to have the authority to raise this money and fund reserves. So we went along with that, but we made it clear a number of times that that's fine for the sake of the bylaws governing reserves and how the line items are bundled. But as a separate issue, we wanted assurances that the same line items and GL codes we're used to were kept the same. And the reason for that is just so easy. Every year you look at the road reserve and you go, oh, yep, still at 680 or 650 it was before, and do we want to increase it? It just makes it so simple because you're so used to the various line items. So that's what happened last year. So it just makes it easy for us this year for that to track how we're increasing all these various line items and so on. And the second thing is for the past few years, just for the sake of efficiency, it's been such that when council have questions on the budget, we found the most efficient way is we just send in our questions, and then staff at their convenience can, when they find time to answer a question here or there, they just bundle them up and send back the answers to the budget. We just find it saves time for trying to do it orally and so on. So if that's a reasonable approach, if maybe you could comment on that, or if you got a preferred way to, and it's not many, it's just in between budgets, it's very helpful. We get answers, then it saves time too.
Sorry, it's because this is my first year with this council. I've done budget many different ways and tried many different techniques. I guess as the 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 de- the debate for this jurisdiction is different than the debate where I come from. I would say if you guys want the questions, but then a summary is presented of the questions asked and answered, so that they can be in the minutes of the next meeting. Um, how would that work? I'll maybe refer that to Dulcie.
So my recollection, I'm just going to go back to when Rose Lou was still here as the Director of Finance. And so what I recall is she had this spreadsheet, and basically it had all the council questions in a column with all the answers. And then she would just keep updating it and bringing it back to council for information. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, then we can do that.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to check and make sure, and it was always on the basis it was at staff's convenience. No one was expecting an answer that day or whatever, right? So, yeah. Great, thank you.
Okay, anything further? All right, so moving on. So there is a recommendation listed in the agenda. Someone's, well, I can just get it on the floor and then we can discuss it. Okay, so that council directs staff to increase the property tax not more than 6.5% for 2026, period. That's, I'm not gonna read the rest of it. There's a second by Councillor Lerner. Yeah, so the reason why I've just moved the motion up to the point and not including and not more than 3% for 2027 to 2030 is that's fine to have a kind of a record of maybe what the intent of the financial plan would be. But in terms of just the way it's written in the motion is that, it could, it's almost like it fetters, future council's decision-making ability or around the budget. So, if we want to give direction where, and 3% is used as a target or as a goalpost or whatever for subsequent years, that's fine. But I just think, noting that we're coming into an election year and, in terms of, the 2027 budget, that's going to be done by a new council. So to me, it's just, I don't like we're having things worded in a way which could appear that we are fettering future councils' discretion around the budget. And that's why I've recommended the motion as is. As to the 6.5, obviously, the way the motion is worded is not more than 6.5. So ultimately, this kind of gives staff some room to operate in as they're putting the budget together as per the recommendations of council and so on. But if council so chooses to, have maybe smaller goalposts and not have 6.5, then we can give that direction tonight as well. This gives plenty of wiggle room, but I think I would recommend keeping it at 6.5 until we actually have the capital plan reviewed with council, because I think there may be some expenses coming in there that would signal that we need to keep it at 6.5. So anyways, I'll leave it there to Councillor Lerner as the seconder, and then I have Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. So I have a number of thoughts. I agree that we don't want to fetter future councils. And one thing I will note, though, is that we are required to submit a 5-year financial plan. So the 2027 to 2030 years will have to be filled in with something. So if staff want to put placeholders of 2%, 3%, we do that every year. So every year there's some placeholders. But I do agree we have never previously instructed that it won't be more than a certain amount in the future years. And I agree with Mayor Swain, we probably shouldn't do that, because then what happens is a new council comes in, maybe it's the same people around this table, maybe it's not, whatever, and we end up with some unexpected expense and it has to be 4% or 5%, and then they're faced with the reality of having to go against a previous motion of 3%, and it's very awkward. So I would recommend passing a motion without the 2027 to 2030 amounts and letting staff put the placeholders in that they see are appropriate for that. I also think it's hard for us to guarantee what's going to happen in future years. Whenever we've done this, we've always said we know what's coming up for year 2026, and so we put that in there. And then 2027 is a different reality. The capital plan is a little easier to plan out because you're looking at which roads and things are being done each year. But operationally, things can be so dynamic that it's hard to say what's going to happen in the future years. And so it could be unrealistic for the taxpayers to have an expectation that things are going to be low or going to be high or whatever. The 6.5% I have a difficulty with. I think we need to raise our reserves. I think the amount we have is healthy, but I don't think it's enough. I think we should probably have double the amount of money we have in our reserves. The more the merrier, but I don't think that's going to happen overnight. And I also agree that the construction cost index is astronomical. We recently did a water main where 3 years ago we got a quotation. Granted, it was a Class D estimate, but it was in the $600,000 range. And then by the time it was tendered, it was in the $900,000 range. So that keeps happening just by the nature of the insane inflation of non-residential construction. BC tends to have a very high level of that inflation rate. But I also know that taxpayers, 6.5% is very hard for them to afford. I know when we were looking last year, we asked for options at 0, 1, 2, 3%. We were looking at different things. We ended up going with the higher level. We went with the 3%. But even then, there were people who were looking at that and saying, I can't afford this. And I know I heard from residents when we did the 3% who said, I understand why you did it. You needed to do it. But an extra $100 a year is a hit for them. An extra $100 a year could be, the cost of maintaining their water filtration system or doing their fireplace cleaning for the year or whatever it is that they have to do. It's not insignificant. So I've been looking around. Not that many BC municipalities have actually set their rates yet. I know the library was at 4.6, but most of the others I haven't seen rates set at. In Ontario, they're coming in between 3 and 4.5%. Ontario has a little bit of a lower construction inflation index, but I would feel more comfortable at 4% or 4.5%. I do see that there's an alternative recommendation on the agenda that says 3%. I think 3 might be a little bit low. So I'm of two minds. One is to amend it tonight to say 4.5%, not more than 4.5%. Another is to leave it at 6.5% until we've had our capital discussion, so we know what all the capital expenses are planned, and then revisit this motion. And in other words, we could pass it tonight, but once we know what the capital expenses are, we might end up cutting some or adding some. We may then, and our reserve discussion, which will also be at another night, and then make a decision. We might say, you know what, we're okay skipping this project. We're okay not having as much of an increase, because I just think 6.5 is going to hit hard for a lot of families. But yeah, I'll leave it there for now, but maybe I'll speak more later. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
Yes, I do not want to pass any number tonight, 4.5 or 6.6 or any number. The reason is that I still don't have the information, and it will come, right? This is a process doing the budget. I don't think we need to settle on a number tonight, even as a placeholder. And the reason is that these numbers are picked up on by the press, and it goes out there, and we see in the news, Lantzville's considering and then a number is in there for a tax increase. It's kind of a game of, who's going to come out and set a number first. We don't know what Nanaimo's doing, RDN. We know that, perhaps it's 52% of Lantzville's taxes are from sources, coming from sources out of the district. 52 or 48, I'm not sure which way. Director Sapola, would you like to correct me on that, what the exact number is?
I'm sorry, I'd have to look that up again.
Yeah. Okay, but, I mean, we all know, looking at our tax bills, that most of our taxes, or a large portion of them, are coming from outside of Lantzville. So there have been hits there of, I think it was 11% last year, and this is one of the problems we face. We start chalking our, running ours up as well. It is even harder on residents. So I would like to actually postpone this motion. We'll get more information on the reserves, more information on the staff budget and wages summaries, and there are a couple of other things that are going to come to us, and I think I'll be in a better position to weigh in. I am inclined to go in the 3%, and I'm actually wondering if we should be asking for a budget at that. We've been presented with a budget that's at 6 or 6.5, whatever it was. But I know that's reaching pretty high, so I would be interested in seeing the budget at 3. However, I have no idea what I'm asking in terms of work, for you. So kind of just put that out there, and you can respond if you like. But yeah, to council, my suggestion would be that we postpone the motion, so we're not putting a number out there and starting to, raise the eyebrows of everybody who's paying attention when really we don't know.
Councillor Savage.
Yes, previously we arrive at different amounts by going through the line items. So line by line, we found all sorts of savings in the past. I remember one year, I think the proposal was about a 13% increase, and we brought it down to 0. And it just all adds up. So like one year, we reduced the legal funding from about 150,000 down to 75,000 thereabouts. And it all adds up. So I wouldn't want to target. I wouldn't want to come up with something like 6.5, which is too high for me. I'd be looking more like 3% would be my target before we've had a chance to go through all the operational costs. That doesn't mean we go through every line. It's just we pick out ones that appear to have increases that could be reduced somewhat. And we've been successful at bringing that amount down that way. And just generally for me, this is something I'm hoping to correct, but council comes up with all sorts of smart money-saving things over the years, and it's important they're acted upon. Otherwise, they, and until we get to that point, that's why in our priorities we had one of our priorities was to come up with a financial master plan. And what was meant by that was incorporating a lot of these ideas that occur every month of the year, not just at budget time, in order to increase income and reduce savings. And some of the things that we're still waiting for, and I'm looking forward to us being able to do this more consistently so that our tax rate, our tax increases are more consistent. We had the development bylaw 175 amendments. They save a lot of money. They really do. So when we're doing roads and other things, they're a big savings. The dark skies policy, like in the foothills, that saves money on streetlights. That saves Hydro from having too many streetlights. The one road in the foothills, Spence's Way, has no streetlights whatsoever, and it's a fairly new road. So the road standards, we've been waiting since January 2023 to get these simple amendments done. And when they're done, we really got to get on it. Our roads will be not based so much on storm sewers and sidewalks and all this very expensive stuff, but will be based more on gravel and grass road shoulders. That increases parking, helps with drainage, so you don't need as many storm sewers and so on, and they're cheaper to build roads like that, and they keep Lantzville's more semi-rural type road look. So then there's also our development project on Wiles Road that was started, over a year and a half ago. And the initial investment plus profit is being tied up. And that profit is something that, if it's $500,000 or $1 million profit, that's one big tax saving for that year. So I'd like to see those done more consistently and more efficiently, sort of thing. And then we've been waiting since January 2023 to get a legal opinion on what we can do with our water connection fees, and that will help with, once we know all the parameters of what they can be used for, that will help free up funds too for some of our capital projects and so on. And just to give you an example of volunteerism, the Village Improvement Phase 1 spent $48,000 on a design for landscaping. And for Phase 2, it was, I got such a throat tickle. Anyway, Phase 2, it was council and resident input that designed the landscaping. So there's a big savings. So volunteers can save money, and we've got to start celebrating them more and not avoid volunteerism. And grants save money. So hopefully the grants, I put in a couple, hopefully those will be successful and I've certainly applied for, and I'm looking just for the future. Hopefully we can come up with a method, say with a consultant, just recruit a consultant to, it won't be full-time or even part-time, it's just you can get them to feed us every grant opportunity that comes up and then apply for them when it's beneficial for us, so that we're continually upping the money we're bringing in through grants is the other one. So all of those are money makers, and just for me, I really want to see more of this approach, not just relying on taxes all the time for income, and always looking for savings, always looking for extra ways for income, like continually developing, look for development opportunities so they're district developed and that money comes to us, the profit. It's just all those things, when they're done consistently, then I'll be far more comfortable doing capital reserves, increasing them to the point where, the second you put in a new water pipe every year, you fund a 50th of that. So if they need replacement in 50 years, the money is there. And so that's proper to capital reserve funding. So basically that's what I'm looking at for, and then DCCs are another form that we've got to keep in mind as well when we're doing the capital next meeting, funding the reserves, is that DCCs are a big part of that. And with all the new development, that's an opportunity for DCCs to help with that funding. And as well with our new DCC bylaw that we initiated, we're going to have more things that are funded in it. There's a couple more categories, and we did increases to cover inflation. So all of these things I've just mentioned are things that we should be proud of, that are giving us a healthy future, especially our DCC bylaw. We're going to see big increases with every unit developed, and we're going to see new categories and so on. So I see us as in a pretty healthy shape. And then the last one that's extremely important that I didn't mention with bylaw 175, it ties in with our green infrastructure. And this is something BC is promoting big time, it's all over Ottawa. You can't turn around without seeing an example of the green infrastructure. So it's being promoted. There's lots of communities doing it. And it's basically, for a drainage example, we have a lot of green space, undeveloped land in Lantzville, and it's using the land as accommodating drainage and only having storm sewers as a somewhat of a backup to handle those flood events, 100-year flood event, 10-year, 20-year flood events. So once we get doing that, it's a big money savings. And so I really want to see us, and I know we've got that on our capital reserve list to come up with a green infrastructure plan. And one of the grants that I brought from Ottawa, which we're applying for, I don't know how that's going, is offering $80,000 towards doing a green infrastructure plan. And that'll be a savings from the 100,000 we have set aside for such a plan in our reserve, as one of our reserve line items for next year. So anyway, all those things I think can help, but without them, all those things I mentioned, we're just relying too much on tax money to, and I really do want to get to a point. I'm used to it in business. It's so funny, but when you get businesses for sale, it's very, very few have proper capital reserve funding. So you buy the business with nothing in the reserve. If a roof goes, you're out of luck. If a truck needs replacing, there's nothing in the reserve to fund it. And I just can't believe how many businesses I've seen that don't have proper capital reserve funding. So we should be setting that example, but it's going to be a long way off because we inherited roads, you know, that are over 50 years old now, and we incorporate them. So anyway, that's it for me. I'd like to target 3%. So myself, but we haven't had a chance to go through line items. We haven't seen the capital reserves, so I'd be a little reluctant to perhaps set any target now, but it would be 3% is what I'm hoping to end up at. Thank you.
Okay, I've got myself down next, and then Councillor Lerner. Yeah, so I think at this point, I think, really a question through the staff, obviously this 6.5 or up to has not just appeared out of thin air. So maybe staff can just comment a little bit more on, the why behind the up to 6.5, considering you've looked at probably the entire financials. Maybe you don't have complete information at this time, but obviously there is a reason why we're seeing the up to 6.5 recommendation in terms of setting some goalposts for the financial plan. And I do have an amendment that I'll likely suggest.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the 6.5% is to address some of the pinch points that we've been finding within the organization. We're asking for an increase to staffing levels. That is a larger item. I'll be bringing that forward to you with the summary, as council has asked for a summary of the information. One of the examples is asking for another a Tech 2 position in the water treatment area. We currently only have one person that's qualified for running our water system, like signing all of the testing documentation, all the submission of documentation, and running the water system. So we'll be looking to make sure that we're sustainable in that area by asking for another Tech 2 position. Another position that we'll be asking for is an additional admin assistant that will be assisting the CAO and corporate services, just because of the we have a business case for that. I'll be presenting that along with the QP negotiation moving forward, the increase to benefits, things along that nature. That's all fairly significant and some of the organizational changes. It's all right. I have made some notes here for myself. Yes, and then the CET position will be coming. I guess the CAO has already had discussions with you previously on a CET position.
So it's a certified engineering technologist.
Yeah. Yeah, for project management. And that will, that has the possibility of lowering, say, engineering fees on reviewing subdivision applications, being able to go out and reduce maybe some of the need to have the stamp drawings, or he or she will be able to review stamp drawings quite easily. We do have contracted services increases. We have an election next year. We're projecting it to cost in the area of $40,000, so that's a large item for us as well. We are seeing some other reductions, like we went through materials and supplies, and we were able to find some savings in there. We were trying to balance off some of these larger items. The election money we did use reserves for, which came out of the Financial Stabilization Reserve. That was an item that was carried over from last year's financial plan submission. Or, sorry, I'm going to be saying, I'll probably say last year. What I mean is 2025. So the plan that was approved for this year and ongoing. With reductions as well to investment income, and then there was I guess the COVID grant got used up in 2025. That was something that we were carrying for a long time. So that was $115,000, and that went to a couple of special projects. So it's trying to replace income that we're not expecting to get in 2026, and it's also to address the increase in contracted service salaries and wages, benefits, those kinds of things. So that's what we were looking at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I'll just get an amendment on the floor, and then I've got obviously Councillor Lerner next. So I'd like to amend the motion on the floor by inserting at the end, for the purpose of developing the 5-year financial plan bylaw, period. So if there's a seconder. Second by Councillor Lerner. I think that's pretty self-explanatory. If council wants to further amend the motion after this, fine. If you want to, lower the goalposts so it's a smaller percent, but again, this in no way binds us to anything. It just allows staff. Staff has clearly looked at the overall financial picture of the municipality, and obviously can't distill that down in one meeting to council in a bite-sized form. So it's going to take probably a couple meetings to get there, but nonetheless, it allows staff to kind of present what they feel is the budget for the municipality, and then we have to make the tougher decisions, which could be political or what have you, and adjusting the budget. So I'm not worried about necessarily the optics of things at this point and whatsoever. It is what it is. We've done big increases in the past. We've done small increases, but nonetheless, we have to give some kind of parameters for staff to work within. And in this case, they're coming to us and saying, we think we can get this budget developed and under 6.5% increase. We've had much larger ones in the past. But my thoughts are, let them move forward with that. And then really, if council wants to trim it at that point and get it down to 3 or whatever number we land at, that's fine. So anyways, again, this is really about allowing staff to present us with the actual overall the 5-year financial plan. So Councillor Lerner is the seconder, and then to the body.
As the seconder, I'll support the amendment because I think it makes it clear that it's part of a process, and I'm going to support that amendment. But then I'd like to speak to the main motion because I have a feeling I'm not prepared to vote on that tonight. But the main motion. But I'll support the amendment.
Sure. Any other speakers to the amendment? Councillor Savage, go ahead.
Yes, I think eventually we're going to need this amendment, no matter what we decide. However, so I'll support the amendment if it helps do the next 4 years, gives them authority to do that. However, I'm not ready to vote on the main motion either tonight. I really want to go a little more carefully through the line items and et cetera, then hear what's up with the capital next week and so on. And in the past, that's how we've done it. Anyway, I'll say that in a minute. I was just speaking to the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Yes, I don't have an objection to the amendment, but I don't support the main motion, so to support the amendment is a little bit of an odd move. I would suggest we just hold that amendment, and when we settle on the number that we're going in for a motion, then that can be put back in at that time.
Okay. All right, so sounds like there's support for the amendment, so I'll move to calling the question on that. All those in favor and opposed, and sorry, opposed, Councillor Jones is opposed. The amendment carries. Back to the main motion as amended. So Councillor Lerner, and then I'll come back to myself.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my concern here is, one, I haven't seen the capital plan, and I think that's going to have a big place for me on how I feel about 6.5%. If I see that there are items in there that are urgent, that require the 6.5%, then I'll feel differently. Otherwise, if I see things that I think can be spread out so that the pain is lessened for the community as far as tax increases all at once and the cumulative nature of those tax increases, then I would like to see that first. The other thing, though, that came as a surprise to me right now is the discussion of staff expansion. I know that we're hiring the tech position that's posted on the website, but that was authorized as a budget neutral position because it's just budget neutral, so it doesn't require any additional vote of council. But now I'm hearing about other staffing positions, including an admin position and a public works position. And both of those are presumably part of the 6.5%. And I want to see the business cases for those, which I understand based on what staff were saying, those business cases are coming. So I want to see those business cases before making a decision on the 6.5%, because if, let's say, the business case for the tech position is, or the, I guess you'd call it water tech position is approved, but the business case for the admin position is denied, well, that's going to have an implication on the 6.5%. So I'd like to see those cases first. So I think I would like to, now we've had this discussion, I'd like to get a discussion to continue, but I'm not prepared to vote on it yet.
All right, so I'll obviously I got myself done next, but yeah, so based on what I'm hearing, the discussion, it's kind of interesting. I don't even think we need to, really move to pass this motion tonight. We can just simply refer to the next meeting, because I think staff is hearing this discussion loud and clear. And even this discussion will inform staff on considerations in presenting the budget. So they may continue down that same path of the goalpost being up to 6.5, present the business cases and whatever other information at later meetings, and then ultimately council will still have that same authority to reduce the budget down to whatever, or just maintain it at whatever staff recommends. So whether the motion passes or not, or even just is simply referred, I think this discussion is quite informative to staff, and I think when we meet next time, we'll be able to maybe consider passing that. So I'm gonna make a motion to refer the motion on the floor to our next budget meeting. So second by Councillor Savage. This isn't to kill discussion. Councillor Jones, if you wish.
Yes, I support referring this motion to the next budget meeting, and Director Sapola talked earlier to say that if it was council's will to look at a 3% budget, I think she said she could provide, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, I apologize. But what I am hearing around the table is talk about 3% being more supportable. There's two ways to do this. Staff can go through and figure out where they see some savings, and council can also go through line by line. So what I would like to see would be for staff to have their input on that, and then for council to, at the next meeting, when we get this further information that is coming to us, be prepared then or soon after to put our input into that and see what we can do that way.
Did you, yeah, go ahead, Councillor Savage. I think you had your.
Yes, thank you. I didn't want to end this without thanking Director Sapola that she's been very accommodating and seems to get things very quickly. So I appreciate all your help working through things. And this is a typical budget process for us, so we tend to look for savings every time. So, but I did want to thank you for that. And so anyway, the other quick thing I wanted to say was each year we've never passed a motion to accept what staff is proposing. We simply use that as a guiding post, and then as we whittle it down, we watch the tax increase come down. That would be my preferred method, is not to make any motion on it, but just work through it and see how we can get it down. And every savings, you know, last year it was about 33,000 every 1% tax increase. So every 33,000 we whittle down, then that's a 1% tax savings. So anyway, thank you.
Okay, Director Spola.
Thank you, Your Worship. Would it be helpful for council if administration prepared a list of possible cost reductions and go through and maybe not for the next meeting where we're going to be talking about capital, but the meeting after that, the next special meeting after that, we come up with our list of suggestions for some potential cuts, if that serves a bit better, if that's a bit better exercise. That way, everybody in this, like all the staff, will have the opportunity to defend their positions and to bring, and we can bring that forward to council as well. Defend their positions to the CAO. I mean, like she'll be working on the list with me myself. Is that helpful?
Yeah. Yeah, you know, and over the years, we have had many budget presentations and so forth. So, you know, it's yeah, I am kind of not sure what to expect this time around, to be honest with you. But it is helpful to I know when we get this stuff back to have it so it's clearly identified. You know, whatever is being introduced as a improvement to service, just where the funding is coming from and so on. But also, we've done it in the past where it's, by department, as I think you just mentioned, and then each department would present, the budget items that they're requesting, whether it's operational increase in staffing or it's capital items or what have you. And then again, showing, where is it coming from? Is the funding coming out of reserves? Is the funding coming from new taxation? That sort of thing. So, but I guess we'll just wait to see, and then eventually we'll get a complete, budget. And again, like for me, like when I'm looking at the ledger here, it's sort of the GL codes and working across. One thing I really need to see is what our reserve balances are. That helps me to understand as well where we're at, and then again, I think when we get into the capital discussion, will be good. Anything further from council? Before I call the question on the referral motion. Okay, all those in favor and opposed? That is carried unanimously. All right, so that takes us on to the next item, which is the late items. Any late items? Notices motion. Still have nobody in the gallery, so we don't need to worry about number 13 unless we have somebody remotely registered. Nobody remotely? Okay, thank you. So I'll make the motion to close the meeting pursuant to section 91E. Actually, I should get to work backwards here. 91D. E, and N? Yeah, okay, just make sure, I can't read my own writing, terrible. Yes, there we go. So do we have a seconder? Second by Counselor Savage. I'll call the question. All those in favor, opposed, that's carried unanimously. And then just noting time, 7:33